So I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to learn about the Department of Sanitation, which I will refer to as DSNY, and how we move waste through and out of New York City. This presentation will focus on DSNY managed waste, which refers to the waste generated by New York City residents, city agencies, and institutions that is set out on the curb for collection. DSNY managed waste represents about a quarter of New York City's overall waste stream. Commercial waste, construction and demolition debris, and other special wastes, such as electronics, hazardous, and medical, are not included in this data, but are part of the city's solid waste system. Oops. So for those who aren't familiar with the work of DSNY, our agency keeps New York City clean, safe, and healthy by collecting, recycling, and disposing of waste, cleaning streets, attacking illegal dumping, and clearing snow and ice. Since it's Open Data Week, this presentation includes information from the following 3 DSNY datasets that can be found on New York City's Open Data platform: DSNY districts with disposal vendor assignments, DSNY disposal vendors, and DSNY monthly tonnage. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the enormous help I received from the very knowledgeable and dedicated DSNY solid waste experts, which include Chief Adam Conanan, Deputy Director of Solid Waste Management, Sarah Dolinar, Director, Solid Waste Management Compliance and Contracts, and Jen McDonnell, Director, Waste Management Planning. They will be on hand after the presentation to answer questions related to the content presented. Where does New York City waste go? The history of moving DSNY managed waste through and out of New York City involves politics, a consideration of impacts and equity, high-tech solutions, and public and private partnerships, which most New Yorkers don't even contemplate when they put their discards down the chute or on the curb. Hopefully, as a result of this presentation, you will have a better understanding of this fascinating history. Here's an overview of what I will be discussing. I will describe the data set called DSNY districts with disposal vendor assignments, and then we'll explain in more detail the operations of transfer stations, recycling vendors, and organic waste facilities. I will cover a brief history of recycling in New York City and the Fresh Kills landfill, and at the end, there will be time for Q&A. You can access the data set from the New York City Open Data homepage. Just type the name of the data set or something similar in the search bar and the data set will appear. This data set shows the contractors that DSNY relies on to manage the various materials collected from city residents, agencies, and institutions, and connects this information with DSNY districts. DSNY districts contain the same boundaries as New York City community districts. The data set was first published in 2020 and is updated as needed. You can view this data as a table or map. As a reminder, New York City is divided into 59 geographic community districts, each with a community board that advises on land use and zoning, participates in the city budget process, and addresses service delivery in their district. There are 12 community districts in the Bronx, 18 in Brooklyn, 12 in Manhattan, 14 in Queens, and 3 on Staten Island. This data set is a combination of 2 data sets: DSNY districts and DSNY disposal vendors. The DSNY district dataset contains a shapefile of DSNY districts. The DSNY disposal vendors dataset shows the contractors that DSNY uses to manage materials collected from New York City residents, institutions, and city agencies. The dataset contains 59 rows and 31 columns. Like all datasets on the Open Data platform, there is a data dictionary available for download from the main page of the dataset. I will now go over what the key columns represent. This dataset shows the vendors for the following materials that DSNY manages: refuse or DSNY managed waste, also known as garbage or trash; paper recyclables; metal, glass, plastic recyclables, referred to as MGP; food scraps and yard waste, also referred to as organic material. Paper and MGP recyclables are collected citywide. Food and yard waste is currently collected curbside in certain areas and in new smart bins being deployed throughout the city. DSNY is rolling out a universal curbside composting program, which will be fully implemented by October 2024. Fun fact about the MGP stream, it includes beverage cartons because the coating on the paper requires a different recycling process than other paper products. Most of the collection occurs using DSNY curbside collection trucks, some of which have dual bins, which collect a different material in each bin. To service some containerized sites, Easy Pack trucks are used for refuse and paper. Roll-on, roll-off containers are used in some locations for refuse, paper, MGP, and bulk metal. Who are the DSNY disposal vendors? DSNY managed waste or refuse goes to a mix of public and private transfer facilities in the city and one waste to energy facility in the region. Most of what happens in New York City is collection and transfer. The actual disposition, end of life, either in a landfill or waste to energy facility, happens outside of New York City. The vendors DSNY uses were selected through competitive proposal processes. This map shows in red the 5 DSNY-owned transfer facilities and the 3 waste management transfer facilities and 1 Covanta waste-to-energy facility under contract with DSNY. Districts are color-coded to show which facility they use for DSNY managed waste. So the DSNY-owned transfer stations include East 91st Street, the North Shore Marine Transfer Station, Hamilton Avenue Marine Transfer Station, Southwest Brooklyn Marine Transfer Station, and the Staten Island Transfer Station. Contracted vendors include Covanta's Essex Resource Recovery Facility, Waste Management Harlem River Yard Transfer Station, Waste Management Review Avenue Transfer Station, and Waste Management's Barrack Transfer Station. This system achieves the following goals. DSNY managed waste is transferred in the borough in which it is generated according to historic waste sheds. Truck traffic and emissions are reduced by sending waste out of New York City via rail or barge to rail in intermodal containers. And secondary or backup vendors, indicated in purple, are sometimes used to make sure that the system that manages over 10,000 tons daily keeps running smoothly. The following 2020 chart from the October 2021 Solid Waste Management Plan Biennial Update Report shows the throughput of these transfer facilities and the disposal locations accessed principally by rail in New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and South Carolina. Regarding the amount of DSNY managed waste handled at these facilities, it ranges from 450 tons per day to nearly 2,100 tons per day. The red text indicates a waste-to-energy facility. Overall, 30% of DSNY managed waste brought to these transfer stations goes to out-of-city waste-to-energy plants, and the rest, 70%, goes to out-of-city landfills. Who are the DSNY recycling vendors? DSNY managed paper recyclables go to 2 main vendors, Sims and Visi, that have contracts with New York City. Sims sends the paper it receives to Visi via barge under a separate contract. Visi uses the paper it receives at its plant on Staten Island to produce container board, which is used to make corrugated cardboard boxes and other packaging materials. DSNY managed MGP recyclables go to 4 different locations run by Sims Metal Management. At the large Sims Material Recovery Facility, or MRF, in Brooklyn, and the smaller one in Jersey City, commingled MGP is separated and sold to different material reprocessors so that it can be used as post-consumer feedstock by manufacturers. This map shows the Sims and Visi locations and indicates if the facility accepts just paper, just MGP, or both. Districts are color-coded to indicate which facility they use. If a district uses one vendor for paper and another vendor for MGP, this is indicated by the use of stripes. For example, all of Manhattan's paper goes to the West 59th Street Marine Transfer Station, which is indicated through the use of green stripes. But part of Manhattan's MGP goes to Sims Bronx, shaded in brown, and the other part goes to Sims Jersey City, shaded in blue. Similarly, Visi Staten Island receives paper from all of Staten Island and parts of Brooklyn, which is indicated by purple stripes. But Staten Island's MGP goes to Sims, Jersey City, and most of Brooklyn's MGP goes to Sims at the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal. Who are the DSNY organics vendors? Given the size of DSNY's current curbside composting program, DSNY managed organics materials go to 3 locations: Waste Management Barrack Station, Transfer Station, American Recycling's Transfer Station, and the Fresh Kills Compost Facility. Districts are color-coded to indicate which facility they use for their organic material. At Waste Management Barrack, yard waste is separated before processing and goes to Nature's Choice in Middlesex, New Jersey, where it is turned into topsoil and mulch. Processed organics go to the nearby Newtown Creek wastewater treatment plant in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. At American Recycling, yard waste goes to a compost facility on Long Island, and organic waste is sent to an anaerobic digester in Massachusetts. At the Fresh Kills Compost Facility, organic waste is processed into compost. Using the DSNY monthly tonnage data, which is broken down by district on the Open Data portal, and combining this with the DSNY districts with disposal vendor assignments dataset, you can make rough assumptions about where materials go if you attribute all the district tonnages to the primary vendor associated for that material. Focusing on the rough tonnages handled by each disposal vendor by material type, you can get a sense of the relative size of DSNY disposal operations. Looking at the rough figures from November 2022, you see that refuse or waste disposal represents 82% of the total tonnage, which in November 2022 came to a little over 214,000 tons. MGP and paper each represents 8% of the total tonnage, coming in at about 21,000 tons for the same period. Organics represents 2% of total tonnage in November, totaling almost 5,000 tons. Please note that when DSNY's Universal Curbside Composting Program is fully implemented in October 2024, this percentage will change. Let's take a closer look at DSNY's transfer stations. The Staten Island Transfer Station, known as SITS, is a truck-to-container-to-rail facility operated by DSNY, which began operations in 2006. Republic Services operates the SITS rail yard and provides rail transport and disposal pursuant to a service contract. SITS handles only Staten Island DSNY managed waste and received the Solid Waste Association of North America's Golden Transfer Station Award in 2008 for excellence in facility design and operation. Okay, yes. The other transfer stations run by DSNY are marine transfer stations. The pitched roofs recall the original MTS buildings. The most visible elements are the moving gantry cranes that transfer sealed waste containers onto waiting barges. The 3-level design of the processing building and ramp allows for collection vehicles to queue on the ramp and move quickly through the facility without having to line up on the street. Trucks dump on the top level so they don't have to drive over and through waste. Each facility has been designed so that all waste is processed in an enclosed building that will maintain negative air pressure to prevent odors from escaping to the outside. The treatment system neutralizes all odors in the building's air exhaust. The North Shore MTS in College Point, Queens, replaced the former MTS on the site and was constructed in 1954 and serves the same waste shed, Queens Collection Districts 7 through 14. The MTS began operations in 2015. DSNY awarded a service contract to Covanta Sustainable Solutions for the maintenance and operation of the cranes on the barge pier and the transport and disposal of loaded containers to 2 Covanta waste-to-energy facilities, one in Niagara, New York, and the other in Chester, PA. Because the MTS is located across Flushing Bay from LaGuardia Airport, DSNY utilizes the services of a wildlife biologist for the implementation of an approved integrated wildlife bird management program for the MTS. The Hamilton Avenue Marine Transfer Station, located on the Gowanus Canal, replaced the former MTS at the same location and serves the same waste shed, Brooklyn Collection Districts 2, 6 through 10, 14, and 16 through 18. Full MTS operations at Hamilton Avenue began in 2018. DSNY awarded a service contract to Waste Management for the maintenance and operation of the cranes on the barge pier, in addition to the transport and disposal of loaded containers to 2 Virginia landfills. The Southwest Brooklyn MTS at Bay 41st Street was constructed on the site of the demolished Southwest Brooklyn incinerator to serve the same waste shed, Brooklyn Collection Districts 11 through 13 and 15. MTS operations began in 2018. As with the Hamilton Avenue MTS, DSNY awarded a service contract to Waste Management for the maintenance and operation of the cranes, in addition to the transport and disposal of loaded containers to 2 Virginia landfills. The East 91st Street MTS, located on the East River, replaced the pre-existing MTS on the site and serves the same waste shed, Manhattan Districts 5, 6, 8, and 11. The MTS began operating in 2019. As with the North Shore MTS, DSNY awarded a service contract to Covanta for the maintenance and operation of the cranes and the transport and disposal of loaded containers to 2 Covanta waste-to-energy facilities, one in Niagara, New York, and one in Chester, Pennsylvania. The best way to understand how DSNY marine transfer stations works is to see them in operation. Here's a time-lapse video assembled from still photos by DSNY's Director of Photography, Michael Anton, that shows what happens at the 91st Street Marine Transfer Station. In this video, you will see DSNY's trucks dump trash onto the tipping floor, large front-end loaders and other machinery move the trash into sealed containers, and large cranes placing the sealed containers onto floating barges, which are then moved by tug for disposal. I will now briefly describe DSNY's partnerships with private rail served transfer stations. Harlem River Yard, located in the Bronx neighborhood of Mott Haven, owes its name to the property's prior and current use as a freight rail yard, but only a 20-acre portion of the 96-acre site has been retained for intermodal rail use, with rail traffic to and from the yard limited to municipal solid waste shipment. In 2003, Waste Management was awarded a service contract to containerize, transport by rail, and dispose of DSNY managed waste from the Bronx, the waste shed historically handled by the former DSNY South Bronx Marine Transfer Station. Service under the contract began in 2007. Harlem River Yard waste goes to a Virginia landfill. Employees at the Harlem River Yard Transfer Station actively manage 14 acres for conservation projects focused on native landscaping. This conservation program has been certified by the Wildlife Habitat Council since 2010. In 2003, Waste Management was awarded a service contract to use its Varick transfer station located in East Williamsburg, Brooklyn, to containerize, transport by rail, and dispose of DSNY managed waste from Brooklyn districts 1, 3, 4, and 5. The Brooklyn waste shed is handled by the former DSNY Greenpoint Marine Transfer Station. Full rail service began for DSNY managed waste in 2009. Waste from the Varick transfer station goes to an upstate New York landfill and a Virginia landfill. At the Varick transfer station, employees actively manage the site for conservation projects focused on pollinators and invasive species. This conservation program has been certified by the Wildlife Habitat Council since 2013. In 2013, DSNY awarded to Waste Management a service contract to use its Review Avenue transfer station located in Maspeth, Queens, to containerize, export by rail, and dispose of DSNY managed refuse generated by Queens collection districts 1 through 6. This covers the Queens waste shed formerly served by the DSNY Greenpoint MTS. In 2013, Waste Management submitted an application to modify its permit to allow for on-site rail and to enlarge the existing processing building. The New York State Department of Environmental Conservation approved the permit modification in 2014 and service began in 2015. Waste from the Review Avenue transfer station goes to an upstate New York landfill and a Virginia landfill. DSNY entered into a government-to-government agreement with the Port Authority of New York to use its waste-to-energy facility located in Essex County, New Jersey, for DSNY managed waste generated in Manhattan districts 1 through 4, 7, 9, 10, and 12. The waste shed historically served by the West 59th Street and the West 135th Street MTSs. The operator of the facility is Covanta, Essex County. Service began under the agreement in 2012. Covanta Essex recovers ferrous metal from the waste, generates electricity from the heat recovered from combustion of the remaining waste, and sends the ash residue to a permitted ash fill. For its 4 MTSs, DSNY used request for proposals, procurements, and best and final offer processes to solicit vendors to operate and maintain the gantry cranes and to accept loaded containers and transport them by barge for out-of-city disposal via intermodal facilities. In 2013, DSNY partnered with Covanta Environmental Solutions for the transport and disposal of the DSNY managed waste accepted at the North Shore and East 91st Street MTSs. In 2017, DSNY partnered with Waste Management to transport and dispose of the DSNY managed waste accepted at the Hamilton Avenue and the Southwest Brooklyn MTSs. Through the partnership with Covanta, DSNY managed waste from the North Shore and East 91st Street MTSs goes by barge to the Global Container Terminal on Staten Island and then by rail to Covanta waste-to-energy facilities in Niagara, New York, and Chester, Pennsylvania. GCT New York is a full-service container and cargo handling facility located on Staten Island near the Goethals Bridge. Situated on 187 acres, the terminal is readily accessible to major truck routes, fitted with on-dock rail service, and has one of the highest volume cargo capabilities in the New York Harbor. Through the partnership with Waste Management, containers filled with DSNY managed waste from the Southwest Brooklyn and the Hamilton Avenue MTSs travel by barge to Waste Management's Elizabeth Marine Terminal that is located under the Goethals Bridge on the New Jersey side. From there, the containers are drayed to a nearby rail yard and transported via rail to landfills in upstate New York and Virginia. A dray is a portion of an intermodal shipment where the box, trailer, or container on chassis is towed by a truck tractor. You can think of drayed as a synonym for towed when the towing is done by a truck tractor. Republic Services operates the SITS rail yard and provides rail transport and disposal of all of Staten Island's DSNY managed waste pursuant to a service contract. The disposal site for the waste is the Lee County landfill in South Carolina. Now I will describe the operations of New York City's recycling vendors. The Pratt Industry Paper Mill on Staten Island is the borough's fourth largest employer with about 250 workers. Pratt, formerly known as Visi Paper, was the first manufacturing company to settle in New York City in 50 years when it opened its Staten Island paper mill in 1997, and is the largest industrial manufacturing facility in New York City. Originally, all the paper produced at the Pratt location was shipped to other states for reprocessing. In 2008, the factory expanded to produce cardboard and became what is known as a millugator, a paper mill and a corrugating factory under one roof. The West 59th Street MTS is operated by DSNY to receive all of Manhattan's mixed paper recyclables, which are then barged by Visi to its paper mill on Staten Island. The West 59th Street Marine Transfer Station sits on Pier 99 in the Hudson River, where refuse has been dumped into barges since 1939. In the 1980s, the 59th Street Marine Transfer Station was slated for demolition. After the transfer station's reconstruction in the 1990s, artist Stephen Antonakos installed neon lights that trace the outline and windows of the shipping station, which are visible from the Hudson River. Here is a short video created by DSNY's Director of Photography, Michael Anton, that shows the movement of paper recycling from 59th Street. Opened in 2013, the Sunset Park MRF serves as the principal processing facility for all of New York City's MGP as part of a contract between Sims Municipal Recycling and DSNY. The Sunset Park MRF is a collaborative project involving SMR, DSNY, the Department of Small Business Services, and the New York City Economic Development Corporation. These parties have invested more than $110 million to develop the facility. The facility is situated on an 11-acre city-owned pier in the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal in Sunset Park, the former site of an NYPD impoundment lot. Recycled glass and crushed rock from the 2nd Avenue subway construction were used to elevate portions of the site by 4 feet. As a result, these structures remain above the new FEMA 100-year flood maps, and all buildings and equipment remained dry during Hurricane Sandy in October 2012. Here's a short video from Mashable Daily that shows the inside of the Sims MRF in Sunset Park.
In the scheme of things, recycling is one of the simplest things you can do that has an enormous benefit, whether it's economic or environmental. All of the city's metal, glass, plastic, and cartons, chances are they come here to get sorted. We process about 800 tons of recyclables per day. When our system's running, it's about 66 tons every hour. Out of everything that comes here, we see a lot of glass by weight. We see a lot of plastics. Probably 8% of that are just water bottles. So the journey of a plastic bottle, you use it, you're throwing it in your blue bin. The first step, that bag of recycling holding that water bottle is going to get opened up. Right after that, it's going to be passing over a disc screen, which tries to break up the glass and other small items. It's going to pass underneath a magnet. It's not magnetic, so it just continues on. That bottle is going to go under a series of optical sorting cameras. So your water bottle is probably a #1 plastic. So we have one camera in particular looking for PET. When it passes under that camera, the camera registers it and then triggers a jet of air to shoot out that bottle from everything else. It's now in our plastic line for just #1 plastics. It'll probably go through one of our quality control booths. Then that bottle will drop down into one of our bunkers. As that fills up over the course of the day, it gets released into the final conveyor belt, into the baler, where it's getting compressed into a bale. We find a customer for it, and then it's off to get processed into something new. One of the biggest benefits to recycling is the energy savings compared to extracting raw natural resources, refining them, transporting them around the world. When you already have that material in a usable state, you're saving energy across the board. We estimate that about half of the recyclables in New York City do not come here, and they're being littered. They're ending up going to landfill or incineration. All it takes is a separate place to put a couple different categories of things and maybe an extra second of thought when you're going to throw something away. I would just ask that most New Yorkers just try a little bit more. It's really simple, and it really does generate a huge impact.
Next up is info about New York City's organic waste facilities. The Newtown Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant Co-Digestion Project is a partnership involving waste management and the New York City Departments of Environmental Protection and Sanitation to operate the city's first organics recycling facility to convert food waste into a renewable energy source through co-digestion. At Waste Management's Varick Solid Waste Transfer Station, food waste is processed into what is called an engineered bioslurry, a high-quality, consistent slurry with more than 99% of the physical contaminants removed. The engineered bioslurry is delivered to DEP's Newtown Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant, where it is added to the plant's anaerobic digestion system to increase the production of biogas methane. The biogas is transferred to the natural gas grid and delivered to customers for electric power generation, residential and commercial heating, and other everyday uses. DEP's Newtown Creek wastewater resource recovery facility has converted sludge to biogas for decades, but began co-digesting it with food waste in 2016. The Staten Island compost facility, located on the long-closed Fresh Kills landfill, currently takes school organic waste from Staten Island to produce high-grade compost. DSNY Staten Island compost facility, built in 1990, initially accepted leaf and yard waste from landscapers. The facility is owned by DSNY and is operated by We Care Denali. It is permitted to process 105,000 cubic yards per year of leaves, brush, and wood, and in 2016 was approved to accept up to 150 tons per day of source-separated organics. As part of that approval, DSNY recently completed construction of a gore-covered, air-rated, static pile composting system that will cut overall composting process time in half. In 2021, DSNY installed a new large-scale compost bagging machine. This machine can bag 600 bags of compost a week, which significantly increases the efficiency of the composting operation. The high-grade compost created at the facility is made available for free to nonprofit organizations, including community gardens, New York City Department of Parks and Recreation, and other city agencies. Some compost is sold to landscapers and farmers. Throughout the 1880s, 75% of New York City's waste was dumped into the Atlantic Ocean. In 1895, DSNY Commissioner George Waring instituted a waste management plan that eliminated ocean dumping and mandated recycling. Household waste was separated into three categories: food waste, which was steamed and compressed to eventually produce grease for soap products and fertilizer; rubbish, from which paper and other marketable materials were salvaged; and ash, which, along with non-saleable rubbish, was landfilled. In 1918, due to labor and material shortages, World War I brought an end to recycling and the reinstatement of ocean dumping until that practice was federally banned in 1934. From the 1920s to the 1960s, DSNY primarily relied on its own system of incinerators and landfills to handle New York City's waste. Since the 1960s, no new waste disposal facilities were constructed in New York City. Active incinerators numbered 11 in 1964 and 0 in 1994. 6 landfills filled to capacity were closed between 1979 and 1991, leaving the city with only one remaining landfill, the Fresh Kills on Staten Island, which was finally closed in 2001. In 1989, with the passage of Local Law 19, recycling became mandatory in New York City. By 1997, all 59 districts in the 5 boroughs were recycling the same material. The name Fresh Kills comes from the Middle Dutch word kil, which means riverbed or water channel. The original site of the Fresh Kills landfill was mostly tidal creeks and coastal marshland. Planned by Robert Moses in 1948, the landfill was only supposed to be in operation for 3 years. Instead, it became the world's largest landfill, eventually handling all of New York City's waste. In 1996, the New York State Legislature passed a law that required the landfill to close by the end of 2001. The last barge arrived at Fresh Kills on March 22, 2001, but the events on September 11, 2001 led to the temporary resumption of operations at Fresh Kills so that the site could be used as part of the recovery effort. Over the course of nearly a year, rescue workers sifted through 1.2 million tons of materials that came from the World Trade Center site. Once the world's largest landfill, Fresh Kills is now being transformed into a massive public park that will be almost 3 times bigger than Central Park when it is complete sometime in the late 2030s. To turn Fresh Kills into a park means dealing responsibly with all the trash that has been dumped there. DSNY has capped it with plastic, covered it with millions of tons of clean soils, and then planted native grasses. Among DSNY's roles in the conversion of fresh kills into a park is to ensure the integrity of the landfill's environmental control and monitoring systems. It is time for Q&A. If you have any content-related questions, please raise your hand, your digital hand, and I will call on you. For this portion of the presentation, I will be relying on Chief Conanan, Sarah, and Jen because they are the agency experts in this area. I will stop sharing my screen. Okay. All right. So are there any questions? You can raise your digital hands.
I did see Maggie had a question in the chat that she posed, I think, a couple times, so I'll answer it.
Okay,
regarding regarding the core system that manages the organics or pre-processes them at Waste Management's Varick Avenue Transfer Station in Brooklyn. Regarding the co-collection of leaf and yard waste with food scraps or food waste, it is possible to co-digest some of that material at Newtown Creek at the wastewater facility. However, as Marni mentioned, they attempt to separate out manually, usually very large pieces of, say, tree branches, stumps, and bags of leaves to be diverted for composting because it's more efficient to do it that way.
And I guess just really quickly to talk through some administrative questions. One, we will definitely be sharing recording and also be sharing the presentation. So if you want, all the videos I think are embedded in there and you'll be able to send those around as well. So they'll be on the Open Data Week site. We could, I think, also email them to attendees, but I'll stop there and turn it back over to DSNY.
So guys, any other questions?
Looks like Zach has a hand up.
Oh, does Zach? Okay. Zach, okay. You're doing better than I am.
Don't have my hand up, but there's a few questions in the chat.
Oh, there's a hand on your picture.
Yeah, all right. I mean to put it down. I will be putting it down. It's an accident, but
different Zach. Oh, even more further clarification.
That is confusing.
Zach Lind has a question. Can he unmute or how does this work?
You can unmute, Zach.
There we go. So it's actually less of a question, but I wanted to just touch again on, I think, what Kathleen mentioned earlier. This presentation was so helpful and it really made me appreciate all the work that goes on behind the scenes. So just thank you guys so much over at Department of Sanitation. You guys continue to do awesome work and love the presentation.
Thanks, Zach. That was nice. I'm glad you appreciated it. I wasn't sure if anyone was going to appreciate it, but I'm glad you appreciated it. And sorry I didn't turn my video on sooner.
I do see a question here from Vicky in the chat about residential building separation. And I will acknowledge, obviously it's very complex with multiple people who end up touching a material from, say, point of generation to even curbside collection. One program that Sanitation does offer, I believe it restarted recently after a pandemic pause, is training for building staff to understand the different materials and which buckets to put them in, so to speak. I think it has a more formal name of the program, maybe like zero waste building maintenance training, but it's on our website, I'm pretty sure, if you want to find out more about that, where there's also a lot of information about what goes in which bin, similar to the images that Marni put earlier on in the presentation, the color-coded labels that I think you can also order for free from our website if you want stickers and educational materials.
I know the answer to this, whether the compost bags are biodegradable. I'm assuming they're not.
M says, what is the lowest level area that you can define? It's that district level that Marni showed earlier, the collection by district, the community districts. That's what's in the open data set. A couple questions here about the use of plastic bags to collect organics. DSNY does allow that. I would say it's not necessary. It's definitely not required. And some would say it's not the preferred option. I guess it depends on the logistics, again, of what's easiest. We want to facilitate participation, and keeping a bin clean helps with that. We do allow the use of plastic liners or paper or certified compostable liners. The vendors who receive our material are required to have mechanical equipment to separate and remove the plastic prior to final conversion.
I see Charlene has a hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to what Zach said, and I really enjoyed this presentation, and even learning about the history of sanitation in New York City. I'm so glad that we are not dumping trash in the ocean anymore. I had a question regarding the data sets available on the zero waste initiatives. So I know DSNY, like with the expansion of composting, I've seen the bins starting to show up in my neighborhood. But I know that there's also a Refashion NYC textile collection program, but I haven't really been able to find any information on like where those bins are located, or the use of them, or even the tonnage that's collected from them. And if you don't know, would you be able to connect me with a team that might be able to have that information?
Yeah. I know Staten Island tried a pilot in a couple of sections last year. I do not know how successful, nor do I know what type of data they got out of that. I'll speak with the people at Open Data and provide the contact information for the group that can give you those answers.
I will say that there is an opt-in voluntary program called Refashion NYC available to multifamily buildings that you can sign up for, and they'll come. Otherwise, most of the public drop-off collections that DSNY is involved in, obviously, groups that say like Goodwill who do resale, they have their own drop-off spots, but we have organized drop-offs at green markets previously, and information on those would also be available on our website. I really can't stress enough what a wealth of information the DSNY website is, both about our programs, and there's a lot of technical information on reports and studies that we've done over 25 years that are available up there. So if you want to dive in, there's plenty to dive into. I'm seeing a couple more questions in here. I'm trying to go in order and keep up. As far as the rail question, I would say only by putting together the data sets that Marni did for this presentation, you could try to piece that together, but we don't have the information about those movements on any sort of frequency available in open data. I'm not sure, Scott, what how to best answer your questions. If you want to clarify that any further, that's Scott Colber. For the plastics, this is answering IE's question. That varies based on market conditions and who's buying the different types of plastics. It is unfortunately a relatively low percentage. If you're interested in plastics recovery, I would recommend learning more about the EPR, extended producer responsibility legislation that's pending that would start to require producers of certain packaging materials to make sure they're recyclable and contribute to the management of them financially.
Organics collected in smart bins.
Who's asking that?
Thanks for the presentation. Organics collected from the smart bins.
The question from Shen talking about smart bins throughout the city. Depending on where they're located, whether if it's Queens, we utilize American Recycling as well as Varick. Manhattan, we're picking them up and disposing of the organics from those smart bins at Varick. So those are our primary disposal sites for all of our organics right now.
Transfer sites.
Right, transfer sites, I'm sorry.
Allison, I believe the data on Open Data is only available monthly, the totals.
Viv Carter, Big Reuse, wants to know if waste is still incinerated in Newark.
Yes.
Yes, all of the Manhattan waste collected, goes over to the
From
Essex.
the west side.
From the west side, goes over to the Covanta Essex County incinerator. And it's incinerated there at the waste to energy facility.
I don't know. Maggie Clark. Maggie, what capture rates are you asking about? Where can I find capture rates over the years? Maggie? I see you up there. Are you on mute? What capture rates are you asking for? Recycling?
Okay, I can actually talk. That's good. Yeah, in other words, for each type of recyclable and organics, what percentage is captured, is collected versus the total that is available to be collected, and per district, per month.
We don't have, our Bureau of Recycling and Sustainability would have those numbers. We can, again, provide a link and contact information for that.
What I would add is we generally calculate those on an ongoing basis using the results of the waste characterization study. It's not something we measure frequently because it's very labor intensive to sort through and come up with what a capture rate is. And for those who may not know that terminology, it refers to, of all the available recycling, and this was mentioned in the Sims video, we only maybe get half of what's available that's set out at the curb, and we would call that the capture rate. So the only way to accurately measure it is to take, say, all of the trash from a given location for a period of time, sort it all out, see how much was put in the correct recycling bucket versus the trash bucket for those items that are recyclable, and then calculate that rate. So we do that periodically, usually about every 5 years with the waste characterization study. That's one of the studies that I mentioned is available on our website. And we are in the process of doing another update of that count as we speak. So there should be another report in a year or two looking at how we're doing with capture.
I think I've seen some of this data somewhere. And over the years, whenever I've looked for overall capture rate for recyclables, it's been about 50%. Is that about right? This 50% number goes back quite a ways.
I think it seems reasonable. You could sort of gut check that with our what we know about the overall waste stream. And Marni showed some of these numbers. If we assume there's about 1,200 tons a day, and she was looking at monthly, so, multiply that by 30. And then if you look at the waste characterization study, we know like what percentage is recycling, and then we look at how many tons were recycled. You can sort of try to match them up if you use a defined time period. But again, we don't go out in the field and remeasure capture rate on a frequent basis because it's very labor intensive.
And thank you so much for all the questions, and again to the DSNY team for the presentation. I know there was a question that came in about how to work with some of this data, and we do have discovering open data classes both this evening and tomorrow evening as well as at the School of Data conference on Saturday. If you go to nyc.gov/discover open data, you could find more there. And I think just in the interest of time, I don't know if we want to take another question or two from the DSNY team. I know we keep going here for a while, and certainly if you do have questions, please do send them in, and we'll make sure that they get answered.
Last year, we went to Nepal to help build a community network.
So it's cold here. That's a good surprise. We are heading to the club where we connected the first part of the community network. But it's a beautiful and quiet day here.
So that's where we have the first receiving antenna. So Everest View Hotel sends the signal to that antenna, and from that antenna we have made a point-to-point clear line of sight to the Kumjung school lab. I'll show you the school lab as well, but that's how we have connected this. It's not easy, it's not simple. but we have done it.
We met with the community and learned how impactful gaining internet access has been.
They have a whole chapter on the internet. So what was happening previously was that they were able to just read the text, but they couldn't practically experience the internet. And with this community network, when we have connected this lab with the internet, now the students get a chance to not only read the text or the theory, but also do the practical and understand what actually World Wide Web and internet is all about. And here you see we have put a Wi-Fi spot as well, because the teachers were very excited. They wanted to have internet access after the school hours. And yesterday the school principal was telling us they stand here until 10 p.m. to use internet.
Right now, residents can only access the internet at the school or community center. This year, we're working to bring fiber internet to the villages to expand access. We're trying to raise as much as we can before the rainy season starts. Help us bring internet to Everest. You can help by donating at internetsociety.org/Nepal. Everyone deserves affordable and reliable internet access. Because the internet is for everyone.